Hi, John.
How's it going?
It's going great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the John and Casey podcast today. We're missing Anne Marie. So we're going to do something a little different today, and I'm excited about it. I just want to ask John a bunch of questions, and it'll be in the vein of what he's working on because I get to hear him talk when we talk about just I love getting to process with you and have conversations about what you're writing about because I've known you a long time and I've seen you read a lot, listen to a lot of audiobooks, create a lot. You've done things on the back end for one that you don't love creating, but you're always creative, thoughtful. And then I've had the opportunity to get to talk with you and hear the way that you process. But I haven't until this last season, like the last 6 months or 9 months, seen you actually start to write a lot more. And then it's no shock that you're like prolific once you did start writing. And I don't know that you give yourself enough credit for that. I know that John's in the middle of writing a book. So I'm telling that to you guys who are listening, but I know you're in the middle of it. It's not, this is a work in progress. But I just want to spend some time talking about it because I love our conversations about it. And there's some things that I think are very, very important, especially as a mom of four men and somebody who loves getting to have a lot of male friends because you are specifically writing to men in your book. So I'm going to ask John about that and I'll have a lot of good questions. But also, you have something out right now. I know some of the people who've been listening to our podcast have been following with your notes on wisdom. And that's a totally separate thing. So I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions. And I'm grateful that you're willing to be put on the spot a little bit here, John. But first, I want to just give you space to put out some caveats because you are definitely in the middle of the writing process. So, what are your caveats that you want everybody to hear?
Well, yeah, I'm not at the refined presentation stage in terms of how I talk about all this. So we did get the first draft done. We got it into some people's hands. We've been getting feedback. There's definitely more work to be done. So it's going to be a journey. I think the hardest part is once you get it written, getting it ready to get out there. So I guess that's like caveat number one is I spoke at a church the other day and I was like, man, I need to refine my presentation because I go too deep into some concepts that people don't really get, and I skim over things that I need to explain better. And so this is going to be a little bit rough, is thing number one. Thing number two is, people immediately go to when you talk about masculine spirituality, this question of masculine versus feminine spirituality. It's like, it's not that. It's just the masculine transformation journey is the one I've lived, and it's the one that I really started studying in depth for my boys because my two oldest are boys. So at some point I will figure out this whole thing with Heather on what's the path look like for Maya, our daughter. But at this point it's been all focused on men. So I just want to put that out there that I can't answer for the rest of the equation here.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because you're not saying like this is about masculinity as much as it is like you are a man who's been on this spiritual journey and you can speak from that place about the spiritual journey for men. And I think for a long time I was kind of like, there's not a difference, but I do think there is one. And it's not like a huge one. It's just that I know that if I wrote a book, it would be so different than yours. And I almost think across the board, you could put men and women, like not separate them in a weird way, just more like if you had everybody write about the spiritual journey, there's probably some things that are going to be really different and
Yeah.
the perspective is going to be different, of course, on a spectrum for women and men. And it's totally a spectrum. But I I love that your book is not just acting like there's not a difference too. So I'm excited to
Yeah.
read more and hear about that from your perspective as a man.
Yeah.
But let's back up a little bit and talk first about tell me about Notes on Wisdom and where that idea came from and why you wanted to do it.
Well, I went and did a retreat, and it was something I wasn't super excited about doing, but someone invited me to do it, so I went and did it. And about, I don't know, last day, one of the things we did was we looked at these different chapters of like decades of our life as chapters, and they were like, name the decades of your life, and so you're moving forward too. And I realized, oh my goodness, the next decade I had written raising my men. And it was just this realization that I have. So at the time, Cash was like about to turn 7. And I was like, I have, 11 years until he's on his own. So kind of this idea of I have a decade to shape him intentionally. And that mattered to me a lot. Going back, like many people wanted to be, a father or mother forever. That was not really me. I thought I would do it at some point, but did not spend a lot of time and energy thinking about this whole idea of being a dad and raising a family. In fact, there were times where I was like, I'm probably just going to have like a nanny to help raise our kids and everything. Cause I was like very like work focused and impact focused. And I was like, I will use my life to do really cool stuff and big stuff and all that. And then God really captured my heart and took me down a totally different path. And I remember telling Heather when we were dating, you're gonna have to think of yourself as a single mom because I'm gonna be traveling all over the world so much. Because at the
How do
time
you
when we
feel
met,
about that?
you know what's funny is she goes, okay. And we always joke about it because I go, how in the world would you say okay to something like that? Like she is so family focused. And she's like, I think I just knew that that's not what was
Come
going to
around.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so God really challenged me on it. I mean, years ago, Casey, I'm sure you remember us talking about this, but it was like one day God told me, if you trade any part of your family for your career, your work, then you've missed it all completely. And it was like this huge conviction. So, the series of conversations with God and Him showing me things that led me to go, man, I need to put way more focus on this family thing that I've been doing. And I need to, and then also God taking me through a series of dying around ambition and career and success. And all that comes out of just perverted understanding of the path that we were created for and us looking for identity and affirmation in places that we're not supposed to look, that we can't really find it. So all this is to say that I came back with this, wow, I have a decade, I need to get busy. What is it that I want to pass down to my boys? For years, I've read tons and tons of books and spent thousands of hours with mentors. And so I've had this learning journey that I've been on, and I wanted to figure out how do I pass that on to them. And there's this idea of a 60-inch bookshelf that I've loved for years, which is take all of your favorite books that you can fit on a 60-inch bookshelf, and then you try to get your kids to read them before they leave the house, before they're 18. And um, I realized I don't think an 18-year-old is going to understand the books that have impacted me the most. Like I barely understand them half the time. So to just assume that I can hand them to them doesn't really work. So then I began this process of trying to take the most important pieces of wisdom that I really wanted to make sure that the boys got and distilling them into principles, mindsets, mental models, stuff like that. And that's where really Notes on Wisdom came from, because I was sharing this with friends and they were going, hey, you should send out like a newsletter and just include the stuff that you're writing in it. Interestingly, it is not written for kids, and it's not written for 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds. That's mostly because to get to the point where I can effectively share it with young kids, I have to write it more the way that I've learned it and that I think, and then work backwards to simplify, simplify, simplify. So some people will be like, "Oh, you're writing this for your kids," and they read it and like, "This is not like feel like it's
It's
kid friendly." It's like,
still
yeah,
in process.
but what it's allowed me to do is I can take these different notes that we've written, these different concepts, and I can talk to my kids really intentionally about them now, because I've taken the hours and hours to actually write and try to communicate it effectively.
That's really cool. And I totally identify with what you're talking about, even with the one journey still, because it's like just now, after practicing the one journey with people, writing about it, doing so much work on it, it's just such a
Yeah.
distilling process. Just now am I figuring out, I think, how to make some things way more simple, like 12-year-old understanding, because I need that. And everybody almost needs to hold on to it. You kind of need to be able to describe it to a 12-year-old in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it sounds simple. It's not simple.
Yeah.
It means you have to be like almost a master of the material and have practiced sharing it with people so many times that now you can do it simply.
Yeah. I think it's Benjamin Franklin that said, I wrote you a long note because I didn't have time to write you a short one, or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
some really good quotes about that. Definitely have been true in my experience.
Well, I'm really appreciating that you're sharing this because it makes me realize I do have a 19-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they are definitely at an age where they can read and appreciate and engage with your notes. And I want to share it with them. I haven't done that. The thing I wanted to say too when you were talking is one reason I so endorse John Walt is you really are brilliant at thinking through mental models. And so you're somebody that, I mean, the first time I met you, we probably talked for 4 hours. I don't know. But it's almost like you take all this cloud of experience and thoughts and other people's thoughts. That's one reason I really value a lot of your wisdom is you have this ability to think about, to hold all of this stuff and then to really start to distill and put it in a model that is understandable and useful. And it's not like this is the way it should be. It's like, here's how you can think about this, or
Mm.
you challenge me, not saying like you're wrong, Cayce. It's more just like you can see that I'm not even thinking about the way that I'm thinking about it. That's kind of flawed,
Oh
for
yeah.
lack of a better word. Yeah, and I know when you and I first met too, we kind of had to like get used to each other because you're almost always looking for like the flaw or the like what's missing, and I never am. And it's a good partnership, but I guess the thing is beyond that, it produces this really unique gift that you have, this skill that you have. So it's a real gift. I'm not just pushing your stuff because I love you. I'm pushing it because I actually really think it's value. I think
Thank you.
that a lot of people don't have time to read, don't take the time, will never make the time. I don't necessarily want to hand my kids 10 books
Yeah.
on a masculine spiritual journey or just life in general. I know what's going to happen. They're not going to read them, or they might, and that's fine. But I just think you are really giving people something of value in a small package. And the notes on wisdom aren't short, but they're not long either. Okay, well, moving on from that, talk to me a little bit more about what you are writing, the book that you're writing. Why are you writing it, and who are you writing it to?
Yeah. Um, the first line in the book is most truly important things can't be discovered, only remembered. And so for me, this is everything I'm writing is not because John Walt has figured stuff out. It's mostly because I've been able to like reap this wisdom from these really incredible people. And to your point a second ago, like I really do enjoy synthesizing things,
Yeah,
and
you're so good
I
at
just
it.
can't help it. So it's kind of just like a part of who I am.
Mhm.
So in this season, it's like once I began digging into how do I want to raise my boys, I couldn't I couldn't believe some of the stuff that I found. And to the other thing you said, Casey, like I don't I think most of the time the problem is that we're asking the wrong questions. It's not that it's not right or wrong, because we a lot of times we get attracted to is this person's thinking right or is that person's thinking right? And usually the answer is we're all asking the wrong question. And there's a something I love. I looked it up the other day because I was talking with a friend about it, but is the idea that the more that you learn, the more that you realize how little you know. And this process has definitely been that for me. The more that I've learned about the journey that men need to go on, I definitely have gone, wow, there's so much that we have forgotten here. And there's so much that I still have yet to understand. But um, the question that I was asking was, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to remind you of who are you writing to?
Yeah. So really the focus was I wanted to write something for my boys that when they came to the age where they are deciding about the path that they're going to go down in life, that there is a very clear roadmap in front of them. And the roadmap isn't here are all the right things to do. It's here's the right, maybe the I shouldn't say right, but here is a better understanding of the life that you were created to live and the journey that you were created to walk, because our modern world is built on lies. And fundamentally, it's just we have forgotten who we are. And my notes dig into different principles that tie into this, but like, the whole concept of dualism and the sacred and the secular. We don't view our whole life as deeply integrated as a spiritual life in all the things that we do. The consequences of that are just massive.
Yeah.
Our modern world is built around what I call box and line thinking. That's one of my mentors um, taught me about all this. But it's the idea that we think about things through the lens of organizations and org charts and, what's your job description? What's your role? Like everything is it's boxy in our world today. That's not how we were created to live. Like we're created for relationship, we're created for identity. So when you shift from seeing the world as organized around titles, descriptions, and roles inside of larger organizations and groups, and you shift to thinking about it in terms of being organized around identity and connection and relationship to other people, to God, to ourselves, it really changes the way you live. So all of these things stack up to just point you to a different way of living that we've forgotten about, maybe many different people have never known, many different communities have never known.
John, can I interrupt you there because you're saying you wrote this really specifically for your boys or men to have a map, but it dawns on me that almost every man I know didn't have one.
Yeah,
And so to me, it sounds like you're really speaking to any man who actually wants to go deeper into seeing what's real and applying these things that they didn't get. And I think one of the
yeah,
hardest things for humans in general is we don't know what we didn't get because we can't, it's literally a blind spot.
yeah,
If I don't, and it's called an absence of good things. If I am born, say I'm born without parents and I live
yeah.
in the jungle, like use the cartoon of like, what is that
Jungle Book.
cartoon? Is
Jungle
it
Book.
Tarzan?
Oh,
Yeah,
Tarzan. Yeah,
Tarzan.
yeah,
I guess a lot of cartoons are kind of like this, but the hard part about little Tarzan understanding what a mother and father could offer to him is that all he knows is what he knows, and he doesn't know what it even is to have the
yeah,
presence of a mother and a father. And I think that that's a huge deal in our spiritual world right now because we lost just because we became a modern society so
yeah,
fast. We lost so much to your point about remembering but we don't even know what we're supposed to be remembering. So I think that what you're writing is just universally applicable for anybody who wants to actually know a little bit more because you've done the
yeah.
research and you've done the work. You've had the experience in your own life, but that is very limited.
What?
You also are very uniquely gifted to do the synthesizing. And so I think that this is for anyone who actually wants to go deeper.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't get a lot of this actually. I think I had to go look for it, and God provided these different. I can look back now and I can go, oh, that's what happened. Like this was a form of initiation when this happened. No, when I turned 13, my dad had friends over and did like an initiation ceremony thing, which was awesome. And initiation stuff happens somewhat regularly in different groups of Christian communities and stuff. What's fascinating to me though is that when it's practiced, it's seen as a ceremony, but it's not a ceremony. It's a process of preparation. And then it's actually a simulation of dying so that the boy can die and the man can be reborn. And so there's this concept of boy psychology versus man psychology. All of this stuff is not fundamentally Christian right here. If we go back and we look at ancestral communities and this most of human history, what we see is that tribes saw the importance of initiating men, which was basically they knew that young men needed to through a process to move from being self-obsessed to being contributors to the community, to playing their role. And now we've taken that all away. And there's a really interesting story in one of the books I read. I can't remember which one right now, but They talk about how, I think in like South America somewhere, there was this tribe where like when the young men were becoming men, they would take them through this initiation process where they would go make their own axe, and then they would come back and they would have this axe that they fashioned, and it was a symbol of power and masculine identity. And so then the Anglos came in and they thought, well, let's just give everyone axes. And then the whole community fell apart because the structure of the society was built on these self-obsessed young boys that are necessarily self-obsessed. When you're a kid, it's all about you. You're learning, you're growing, all that stuff. We're not required to let go of that in order to become a man. They were just given the symbols of masculinity or of manhood without requiring the process. And so the idea that men need to go on a journey is timeless.
Mhm.
We've just completely forgotten about it. We've gotten rid
Or
of it.
do you think we've kind of even seen it as barbaric? Like it's like been like cartoonized, like of the tribal cultures who
Yeah.
make their kids do these things. And I mean, Father Richard Rohr was the first one when I read one of his
Yeah.
books, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, that talked about all the missing male initiation things.
Yeah.
And I think before I'd read that, I thought those things were barbaric. I'm glad they're gone. And then he showed me, no, this is essential for growth. And
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's also what you're saying, but keep going. I mean, I'm sorry I
Well, so
interrupted
what
you.
I've looked at is we have this very ancient, it can seem barbaric process of initiation that doesn't really resonate in our modern culture. Like, what is this exactly?
Yeah.
And I saw Richard Rohr did the best of anyone of talking about this stuff, just to be clear. But I didn't see anything that I was like, this makes sense to me. And as someone that reads a ton also in psychology, so like, and I guess what I'm trying to say is like my foundational thinking was not just in modern Christianity. It was this larger picture of just what do we know about what we need and how we think and how people grow and all that. So I realized that the key to initiation was not the ceremony itself. It didn't have anything to do with that. Like all these tribes did it totally differently. And then before the Industrial Revolution, we actually had apprenticeship programs, and apprenticeships were another form of initiation. A young man would leave and go study under a master. He would spend tons of time with this master. Mirror neurons are a way that we learn by imitating. And so they would literally be with the master all the time. They would learn to imitate. And just by being with them, it helped change the young man. But the point is, it really doesn't matter what you do, so long as there is a definitive point in your time, in your life, where you go, I'm going to go from my life being all about me to realizing that my life isn't about me. I'm not the hero in the story. I'm a small part in a much larger story. And so, go ahead.
Do you think this is why coaches are so influential and important?
Yeah.
Like sports coaches?
Because we've removed mentors,
Yeah.
like, and we've removed the elders from the fire circle. And so we now young men have very little contact with older men that are not their dads, to your point.
Yeah. I mean, the only example I can think of that's somewhat healthy and good, and I do see that transformation take place, is like really great football coaches,
Yeah.
basketball coaches. My son who surfs, his coaches, and it's like he's being apprenticed by these older surfers who really help them enter community, show them that it's about so much more than just his surfing, And I am really
Yeah.
thankful for that because outside of sports, I don't see sports and work, you know, like if boys and women are able to be mentored really well in a job scenario. But that's the only thing I can see in our modern world that is
Yeah.
what you're describing. And I appreciate you saying that too, because I agree. Richard Rohr's stuff is so great. The thing that I'm always looking for is what does it look like today
Yeah.
practically? Again, I think this is one reason you and I resonate so much because it's like it's great to study it, it's great to understand it. Now, how do we make it practical for normal
Yeah.
people, including me?
Yeah. And this concept that the point of, we've built the Western world around achievement and like building things, accomplishing things, all that stuff. And the side effect of that is we've lost this whole, who are you becoming? Like who you're becoming is the most important thing in your life. It's not what you do. And that's really what initiation is supposed to be, is it's like the beginning of the journey of becoming who you truly are, who you can be. And it's interesting because if you look at Jesus's teaching through the lens of what we're talking about here, this move from self-obsessed to seeing that you play a small role in a very big story, and that you have to let go of self-obsession in order to be able to step into that role. It gave, at least for me, new eyes to everything that he was saying. And then other stuff I've read and studied has talked about how, Jesus's teaching is highly unusual to us. A lot of the concepts that were brought up, but many of the concepts were actually like present culturally and had been around for a long time. And so when people heard them, it was just like new meaning to like an old, very, very well understood idea. So I think that what it's helped me do is say that the teaching of Jesus is actually like clearly super timeless, super applicable, but it's also not just about becoming a giant love ball. Like I don't like I
A
think
giant what?
love ball. Like
Love ball. Yeah.
I think
Tell,
that the
what do you
way
mean by that? A giant love ball? Like
so I remember being in church years ago, and I think it started when I was like 14 or 15, and looking around and going, man, I really don't want to be like any of these men, because I didn't see men that were in a fight, that were on a journey, that like had deep purpose in their life. Like I saw many people that their faith was a box that they checked and they
give
did
me
it all
five
right.
nugs.
What'd you say? Yeah, yeah. They're good people. And I'm not, everything I'm saying is not to be negative on people. It just was like, if God hadn't captured my heart at a young age through some experiences I'd had, I probably wouldn't have stuck with the whole. I mean, I'm sure God would have brought me back at some point, but like, there's nothing about Christianity that I found super appealing. And then
Yeah,
you're,
and the love ball thing is a good way to say it because I think so much gets lost in this kind of very watered down thing of like it's all just love, and it is love, like God is
yeah,
love. But like the real living the of living this out is where people do get frustrated because it's like then they're I know for me it's like I should be more loving, I should be this, I should be that, but there wasn't like this map of growth that
yeah,
wasn't read your Bible. I mean, it was just so reduced. And you're talking about this thing that's more like it's moving from looking at a map about the land and only doing that, like playing, drawing
yeah,
it out or like learning how to read it. Okay, great. But like to just the 3D world of your actual life.
yeah. The map is
Again,
not the territory.
yeah.
It everything was about how you behaved and what you did and what you believed. What's fascinating is I don't
Mm.
think how you behave, what you do, and what you believe are the most important things.
What's the most important thing?
The most important thing is that you get on the journey. It's that ultimately that we have to surrender. We have to climb on the altar and say, do what you want to do. Like I'm yours. I'm completely surrendered to you. And so in doing that, we become transformed. So the transformation into who God actually created us to be and out of our false self, the self that we create out of our insecurity, our need for control, all that stuff is what we have to get rid of so that we can become who we were truly created to be. What's interesting though is if you look back on the disciples, I've been writing on this and thinking about this a lot lately, but you look back on the disciples, they were always presented to me as, okay, first off, they're unschooled ordinary men. Love that. They spend 3 years with the master. They learn the ways of the master. Then they get filled with the Holy Spirit, and Jesus sends them out. Well, he sends them out, and then they get filled with the Holy Spirit. But anyhow, he sends them out. I always understood it that they went out to spread the religion of Christianity. And what I didn't understand was that they actually went out because they were compelled to share an invitation to a way of life, to a way of living, to truth that not only set people free, but it was the antidote to the evil of their age, to the chaos of their age. I know that this might not resonate with that many people, but
And I want to go back to two things you said, so
okay, no, go back if
don't
you
go
want.
too much further. Well, just I'm so tracking with you, but I'm also bringing the side that I know we've talked about a ton, which is like some of the language you just used. I know you're bringing it not with the religious baggage it carries, but like this is also maybe part of the difference in the way women in this day and age, like me, have experienced a faith journey. But like I got on the altar at a young age and I stayed on it.
Yeah,
And it was not Jesus telling me to do that. It was me believing all these lies that came with our culture and the yuck of religion to basically like I sacrificed my voice. I
yeah,
sacrificed my feeling, my connection to my body as
yeah,
all bad so that I could follow Jesus. So my issue is not the like being willing to do that. It was like that he wasn't even asking me to do that. That was a lot of power structures that I just happened to be born into and all
yeah,
kinds of complexity there. And then the other thing about like truth, like that word is not like you just said, what do you believe about the truth? It's what is really real about you, about
yeah,
life as a human filled with the spirit of God, made in the image of God. That's
totally.
what I know that you mean, because I just need to say this because I know there's triggers. Like there's so many triggers for people who grew up in the church where something got so reduced and used not even intentionally to suppress and just get compliance. And you're
Yeah,
really talking about the exact opposite of that.
totally. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. One thing, like I talk about dying a lot, and I've become convicted that that means something totally different to most people, particularly if they grew up in the Christian world. That
Yep.
to them, it means embracing ongoing suffering as a way of life. And I'm like, which is more like self-flagellation. Like, I'm going to just go through all this horrible stuff because I love God and that's the way it's supposed to be. And it's like, so what separates the idea that we need to overcome ourselves, that we need to transcend ourselves, is not uniquely Christian. That's every wisdom writing in the world talks about that we have to transcend ourselves. So the difference is, though, what Jesus gave us was this path to coming alive, to being reborn on the other side of this, so that, it's not just repressing ourselves, it's actually fully becoming alive. So I have a note that I wrote, and it's a concept in the book, but it's called restraint versus abandon. And one of the questions I had as a young person in the Christian world was, do I get to be fully alive or not? Because like if I don't get to be fully alive, I'm out. Like this probably sounds horrible to some people to say that, but it's like I was very clear at a
I
young
wish
age.
I had that thought. I did
I
at some
need,
point.
yeah, I need to be fully alive. I need to be able to I can't if I'm just supposed to put myself in a prison cell for the rest of my life, that is not going to work. I'll blow it up like whatever. And I actually think, side note, this is why a lot of men end up off the rails, is because they try to do behavior modification and then eventually it just doesn't work and they're just like, screw this, I'm out, and it all blows up. So I think there's some part of me that knew, if I'm just trying to hold myself together to fit into a box I'm supposed to be in, it's not going to work down the road at some point, so why even try? But no, dying is the idea that we're letting the false parts of who we are get taken away so that we can discover what's real. So in other words, we're exchanging the lies that we've believed that have been baked into our minds for the truth. And the truth is what sets us free. I mean, Jesus says all this stuff. It's so fascinating.
Which is very much different than I got to lay down on the altar.
Yeah. Like in my experience, the dying has been like God shows me a part of myself that, so for instance, like I talked earlier about career ambition, and I call it wanting to big time, like be big time. That was like my dragon, and it still is a thing that will creep up, but I recognize it now. So like when I first had to give up my dreams that were associated to that, that was a super intentional process. And you know, I think one of the prayers that we do at one, you'll do an exchange with God, and it was very much a like I give him my desire and need to accomplish a ton of big stuff, and he gave me back this really cool journey that I've been on, but also this like growing peace. And so, total side note, one of the things that I've been writing on too is this idea of peace, because it seems very weak, but it's not very weak. It's like really powerful. So, to come full circle real quick, the reason I was talking about the disciples and all that stuff is because when I read about the disciples and I read Jesus' teaching and I looked around at the Christian world around me, I saw men that I didn't want to be like. I saw weak men. I didn't see people that were living this adventure, that were fully alive, that were wild, all that stuff. Now that might just be my immaturity, but what I've come to see in understanding and studying masculine identity on a deeper level is that, and so I'll get into this in the book, but there's basically these four archetypes throughout history that show up in all of our mythology and stories. And, you know, we even show up now in our movies and stuff, and they're representations of aspects of masculine nature. It's the warrior, the lover. It's the wise man, but they also often call him the magician and the king. And the king is the central archetype. But I call him wise man because if you look at what the definition of the magician is, it's the holder of rarefied knowledge, the holder of secret knowledge, and so it's very much just a wise man. Anyhow, when you go in depth on each of these archetypes, you start to understand masculine nature in a way deeper way. So I'll just give you like one quick snapshot. The warrior is very different. The man warrior is very different than the way that the warrior shows up in a boy. Like a boy that has not yet been initiated, the warrior shows up as the hero. He needs to be the hero. He sees himself as the center of everything. It's all about him. And we see this everywhere where it's like, it's the guy that takes crazy risks, complete recklessness, which is, by the way, is good. And again, this is another thing no one ever told me is like, it's actually good to go through that stage because the warrior, the true warrior, the fulfilled warrior knows his limitations. He knows his boundaries. And he knows that because the hero in him took him to a place where he experienced the dying, and he goes, this is the end. These are my limitations. So I
Mhm.
bring that up to just say, there's so much to explore and talk about there. But when you look at true masculinity, and then you look at the teaching of Jesus and the way that the disciples lived, you begin to see them in a totally different light. And that's what's happened to me. And so the world was filled with all sorts of evil at the time when Jesus came.
Describe evil for me. Like, give me practical
So,
understanding of it.
like, I mean, a lot of the rulers of the time would make Jeffrey Epstein look like really tame. Like it
Yeah.
was crazy. I mean, I'm trying to remember which guy it was, but they would have these huge parties and they would celebrate incest at the parties and stuff. And then in like they would have like children for, I don't even want to go into some of this stuff, but they would have harems of young children and good
There's this moment, it's one of my favorite understandings that I came into about the context of scripture, but there's this moment when Jesus says that he took his disciples to Caesarea Philippi.
to the
And
gates of hell.
yeah. And like you just read it and you don't know where that is or the context of that place and you're like, okay, they went to Caesarea Philippi. But if you understand the context of like that culture, that time, what was happening in the different cities, where he was before they went to Caesarea Philippi was in Capernaum or in near there, Chorazin, this little 2 mile triangle where all the God lovers were. These were all the rabbis are. This is where they study God, they worship God, they want to live their lives to honor God. It's very conservative too. It's not incest worship.
Yeah.
Caesarea Philippi, and this is where like 70% of Jesus's time is spent in that little God-loving, fearing circle
Mm.
near the Sea of Galilee. Caesarea Philippi is 18 miles away. So when they went to Caesarea Philippi, this was an all-day hike.
Yeah.
And there is only one thing there that was happening. And it was what they called the gates of hell. And it was this place where, like, the river ran out of this rock, and there was like almost like this natural amphitheater. And
Mm,
today you can go visit and you can see these niches carved into the rocks where the gates of hell, that's where the water came out of the rock. And what all the only thing that happened there was debauchery. And
wow.
they would have festivals and they would put like phallic symbols into the niches, worship them, and then they would like
Yeah.
have festivals for weeks where they're like copulating with goats. This is the nicest
Yeah.
way I know how to say all these things.
Appreciate
So
it.
when Jesus goes, he took his disciples to Caesarea Philippi. Like that says so much. And then they're literally standing on this rock where they can see all this happening.
Yeah.
It's the only place they would have really been able to even go. And
Yeah.
that's when he goes, "Who do people say that I am?" And then that's the same place where he said to Peter, all this happens on this journey to Caesarea Philippi, where he goes, "Peter, you're a rock, and on this rock I'll build my church." So it's like, what rock is he speaking to?
Yeah.
He didn't take him over to the synagogue and say, "On this
Yeah.
nice, tidy rock, I'll build my church." He took him right there and said, "And the gates, I'll build my church on this rock, and the gates of hell won't prevail against it." He is
Yeah.
taking them to this place, the place of that time where there was all kinds of evil going on. And I'm really glad we talked about this, because I think it's easy to say evil and we don't even know what it means. It's like, it's the stuff nobody likes. Everybody's going,
Yeah.
yeah, this is sickness.
Yeah.
This is clearly not healthy people doing not healthy things that ultimately hurts them and everybody else. Like, but those things were so on display in that culture, the Roman culture, and
Yeah.
then the leaders were killing people left and right. I mean,
Yeah.
people think we live in the worst time ever. No, we don't. Like, just do a
Yeah.
little digging into history. It's not perfect, but it's not
There's a great
bad.
book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, and it's all about how actually the world has become less violent. And
Mm.
so fascinating, because I think a lot of us, we bake our minds in the fear mongering of our day and age, which is
The-
just business models built on capturing our time and attention. And the way to do that is to shock us.
yeah.
And
And we can now. We can see what's going
yeah,
on in every corner of the world and all the horrible things.
yeah. So what's interesting is I love that you shared that. It's just so powerful. And I'm thinking of the part where he goes on to tell you the gates of hell will not prevail against it.
When talk about a journey, I mean, he's just taking these guys, but go on.
Yeah. So what's fascinating is I think if we were to go to any group of good men today and we were to have a conversation about the evils in the world, like sex trafficking is the one that really people talk about all the time. And we all want to bring a solution to these evils, like, and then take it to the next level in totally different ways. We have like so many Christians that are on this political thing where they're like, Christian nationalism, where we're like, we're gonna solve all these problems by getting the right guy in office and all that stuff. And I go, okay, let's pause right there. Everyone wanted Jesus to overthrow the Roman Empire. He could have done it. He knew it was totally pointless. So instead, what did he do? He spent 3 years pouring primarily into 12 guys. Those guys became transformed. The Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, came upon them. And then those guys went out into the darkness, into the evil of the day, and they knew that the most important thing, that the solution, the only solution that has ever worked and that will ever work, is transformed hearts.
Who they were becoming.
They had become transformed, and because of the message that they shared, paired with the transformation that they had undergone, who they were was challenging, was confrontational. So this idea is like they would roll up into these towns and the powers that be would feel threatened. That's why all these guys had to get killed. And so we look around today and it so when I met Heather because I was in Malawi, and the Boko Haram had stolen these 300 girls, and I was really frustrated about it. I went on a run one day, and um, I just had this encounter with God, and He said, if you spend your life fighting injustice and you're honoring injustice more than you're honoring what my son did on the cross, go and build good things. What's so crazy now is like the thing I was asking God that led to that encounter was I was going, where are the men of God? Like it seems like that when we have these tragedies happen, men of God should show up. Where are the men of God? And I just love that like that question now fast forward 11 years is like manifesting in this like we don't there are so many things that are worth doing that are good to do like you know better policies and politics, digging wells in Africa, building houses, you know, overthrowing corrupt regimes, whatever. Like all of this stuff is important and should be done. But if we believe that that is the solution to the world's problems and we allow it to steal from us the realization that the thing that truly matters is transformation, that we become transformed people, then we've missed it completely. And so that's what we've done. That's how we got to where we are today, is that our Christianity has become about what we believe and not who we become. It's not to like so the disciples, I don't think that they went out to be missionaries. That's what has been so redemptive for me about understanding this is they didn't go out to evangelize people. They went to bring the solution that everyone was crying out for and nobody knew. And what's crazy though is that the power of who those guys became with the Spirit of God in them, shared by these 12 guys, planted seeds that we are the byproduct of those seeds. So we're talking about something incredibly powerful. So we have to be really careful not to dilute it and take its power away, which is what we're doing. And so ultimately, this whole idea of understanding the masculine journey and how it actually aligns with who Jesus has called us to be, and that is a super powerful. Like I just think all the time about like when I meet men who carry true peace and wisdom, there's an intensity to their presence. They are deeply loving people. But at the same time, there's like, and with Scott, I just remember it all the time. Like I never wanted to let him down. But it wasn't because I was trying to get his approval. It was because I respected him so much that I didn't want to take lightly what he was saying. Well, all of that originated just in he was loving, he was at peace. There's no control in him or any of that stuff. His presence was the thing, like the who he embodied, what he had become was the powerful thing. So that's really the journey, every man's journey, is the journey to become who we were created to be and to live from that. And that takes time. That's a process.
Yeah. Scott is John's mentor. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that goes without saying, and we've said it before, but just to be clear, your main mentor
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
life. When you use the word becoming, it makes me happy because it's so resonant with what I know to be true about the human journey in general, not just the masculine version of it. Clearly, there's going to be way more resonance across the board with humanity, but the nuances of the differences between being a male or female are just beyond that. A male from South Texas and a female from Washington, D.C. I think you can kind of look at gender almost as like cultural too. And that's not even what I'm trying to say. I'm just not trying to make it male or female. It's just it's a group of people with very common experiences, not the same. But the thing I'm trying to say is when you say it, it reminds me of Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. And I think that for women, now that I've given my caveats, I'm gonna just stereotype women and say for women, we're more comfortable and inspired by this concept of becoming who we really are. And it feels like a beautiful flow that we may want to jump into. And I'm not sure for men that I see the same thing, like apart from like almost this like I'm like hunting and guns and ranching, and again this is South Texas, but the journey is like it's beyond all of that. It's beyond beauty and like self-care for a woman, and it's beyond shooting your first deer. Those things are part of it, but it's this much bigger thing that we've actually been invited to that is like touches every area of our lives. And I just I feel like the emotion as you're talking, and obviously this is emotional for you, and I feel it as a woman, like in other women that I've seen that like embrace this thing about who we're becoming. And so I guess I'm just want you to speak a little bit more to even the emotion that you're feeling right now and what is being touched in you about this, the thing that you're even inviting people into. Like where's the emotion coming from for you?
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. I've definitely cried more in the last 6 months than in the last 10 years because in writing all of this, I just feel broken in a really good way, just like kind of overwhelmed at the things that God's done in my life that I didn't know He was doing, but also at just what He's really inviting us into and just the power of it. And one thing that's been hard for me in a lot of men's focused stuff is, and I'm saying this as I'm obviously clearly emotional about this. This was not my journey has not been an emotionally driven journey. The stuff I'm writing on is not emotionally focused. Like, I think a lot of male spirituality is focused around, uh, like re-engaging your heart and like, and embracing your emotions and finding healing and all that stuff. And all of that is super, super important. But I
Oh, that's
think a lot of
part of
that, that's part of it. That's a very important part of it. But for me, when I was around that stuff when I was younger, I was like, but I wanted to know. I didn't want to know. I didn't want someone to come and tell me your heart can be alive. It's like, well, no shit, my heart can be alive. I know that. Like the question is, can it be alive here with you guys? You know what I mean? And
it.
so, um, I mean, I haven't figured out how to talk about some of this stuff in a kinder way. I want to, but it for me, it's like this isn't emotionally driven. It's not trying to get to a place where we feel okay and accepted and loved and all that stuff. It's like I wanted to know like what is actually what's the journey? What does it really look like? And that is a powerful journey, super important journey, and it's not leading me to a place where I become like this whole idea of turning the other cheek, for instance. Like that was kind of this picture given to me, and so I was like, okay, so that means that I'm going to let people push me around. And I have seen so many men get screwed over in business in the name of Jesus. I'm serious. I'm like, it makes,
So much crap in the name of Jesus.
well, and then I've seen other people completely take advantage of people in the name of Jesus.
Right, both ends of it.
Oh my gosh. And it's like, and everyone's trying to do, it's because we're trying to be this way that we're supposed to be. And we interpret the teaching of Jesus to mean, okay, so I'm just going to let people walk all over me. And it's like, I'm not going to go deep into it right now because there's a million landmines we could step on. So we'd have to be really careful here. But it's like, there, there is nothing weak about this idea that if you become someone who turns the other cheek, it takes so much I don't even call it self control, but most people couldn't turn the other cheek. Like if you could become somebody that's so at peace and so clear at who you are that someone slaps you on the face and you're just like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm going,
Culturally, again, that's super misunderstood because in that day and age, in that culture, turning the other cheek was a very strong kind of FU thing that you would have done to say, hit me again. Like,
yeah,
I dare you to hit me
yeah,
again. It was not submissive.
yeah. And this is where I think the one of the core problems is that, and to go back to the whole idea of masculine versus feminine, we live in a time of gender dilution, which there are definitely real negatives to the way that masculinity has been presented and lived out culturally. No question about that. But it's also clear that healthy societies need the differences between masculine and feminine complementing each other.
Mhm.
So the solution is not to take the masculinity out of men and the femininity out of women and blend us all together and whatever, because there's a balance that happens, and there's some of the stuff that I've studied is just so fascinating, like even just looking at it from like a statistical perspective and an economic perspective. Like there's something really important that happens when men and women come together and play their unique roles. I want to be careful of the word roles, because it's not so much of how we understand gender identity is actually just gender roles, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like the nature of who we are. And so this idea, what has happened, I think, in the modern Christian world is that we have taken the masculinity out of men in the name of Jesus. And then we wonder why
Where
that
are the men?
where are the men? Yeah.
You
We're
hear that
like,
all the time in church settings. Where are the
yeah,
men?
yeah. And it's like, well, you asked them not to show up. Um, and, but the biggest problem is because we're scared. And this is like, there is a reason to be scared of like young men. They're reckless, they make bad decisions, like all that stuff. So it's like, but the point is that it used to be that you had groups of older men that were modeling for young men what it meant to be a man, and then taking these young men with them to follow them around to learn how to live and how to be a man, and then at the right time initiating them into life as a man. And it was like all you wanted to be if you were raised in that environment. Still, if we were raised in that environment, all we would want to, if I were, I'm just going to talk about me. If I were raised in that environment, I would look around and all I would want is to be like these men. It like takes the focus of my life from wanting to become a TikTok influencer or whatever, become a billionaire, to being like, all right, I want to become like these men that are around me. And that is something that happened to me through these different mentors that I had, where I started spending time with these guys. And I just, like with Scott, when I first started meeting with him, I just was like, I don't know what it is, but I want to be like this guy. And so it's a really, really important piece that's missing in our modern church. And I think the cost of not addressing this is massive. And I'm not gonna act like I'm doing it perfectly or have all the answers. I'm trying to just shine a light on, wow, we've buried the lead here. We've hidden the journey, and then we're wondering why we don't have men that we feel like we should have, and we're also wondering why the church feels like it's stuck and Christianity's become about behavior and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's really big. It's a very, very big deal. And I appreciate you using the phrases you just did, like we buried the lead. And again, it's not like someone did this.
No.
It's waking up to the reality that, like, we were designed for something far more and we don't even know that we're missing it. And more than most cultures and people ever born in the world, I think in our generation, it's been lost and buried
Yeah.
because we are so fast paced. We're off the farm. We're
Yeah.
out of the villages and not necessarily better for it. In some ways we are, and in other ways we aren't. I want to just end by having you either do this however you want, but the question is, what would you tell yourself at 22 if you were really able to go back and talk to yourself at 22? And I guess that let's keep it there. I was going to say, or if one of your boys, when they're 22, what do you want them to know? But
Mm.
I actually would rather hear what John Walt at 37, how old are you? 30,
36. Yeah.
36, would go back and tell yourself at 22.
Um, so I had like an encounter with the Lord when I was 22. It was super transformational for me. I wrote on this in the book, I think, but I don't know if I've ever talked to you about it. Um, but basically, I was at a point in life where I was deciding whether or not I was really gonna like do this whole journey with God thing. Like I'd already like was at ministry school and all this stuff, so it's not that I was like questioning whether I would believe in God. It was more like, is my walk with God going to be something I do that kind of fits in, or is it going to be like the central thing that I'm doing? And I read Johnny Cash's biographies, and I think he only has two of them that he wrote. They're autobiographies. And one of them was, I think, called Cash, and the other one's A Man in Black. What was so crazy is I saw in his story a man who had lost himself and was always trying to get back, find himself again, was trying to like recover what had been lost, but he had lost it and he couldn't go back. And even though he didn't write the song Hurt, I think Nine Inch Nails wrote it. It so captured, after reading his books, it just so captured his story. And if you haven't listened to that, it's worth listening to. But basically he just says, I've built this empire of dirt, and if I could do it all over again a million miles away, I'd find myself, or I'd keep myself. I'd find a way.
Mm.
And so the reason I say this is I probably was 22. I don't know exactly. And I couldn't sleep one night. I got up and I started listening to some Johnny Cash music, and I ended up on the floor in the bathroom just like weeping because I felt like God just showed me Johnny Cash's story and said, and it was just like, if this guy could conquer the world but couldn't conquer himself, and the rest of his life wished that he could, then and this guy, Johnny Cash, was like the original rock star, the original bad boy, wild man. Like, most people don't understand the crazy stuff he did and just how messed up he was half the time. But he did everything you could do out there. And I was like, if this guy could try it all, do it all, and the one thing that he kept coming back to was, I wish that I could do this differently. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to lose myself. I'm going to find a way um to do this thing with God, because Johnny Cash really wanted to be a God guy when he was younger. Long story there. But the point is, if I could go back and talk to myself at 22, I think I would have some version of that conversation that fortunately God had with me, which was, first off, that there is no life in the lies that the world is selling you, that they're presenting at, and I'm the world, when I say that, I mean just culture. Like, our culture tells us that identity is found in our success, it's found in our lifestyle, it's found in what we accomplish or who we know or whatever. You go down how we look, all this stuff. It's telling us this is where life is found. But the truth is, obviously, that the only place that life is found is in God. But it is a journey. It's the narrow path that we have to walk. And so I think what I would go back and say is, on top of that, what I felt like God fortunately shared with me, I would say there is like this tried and true path. Like, it's timeless,
Yeah.
and every man has to go on it. And fundamentally, the first beginning point of that journey is the journey to overcome ourselves, to realize that we're not the hero. It's not about us, that our culture is built on this lie that the purpose of our lives is to get what we want when we want it, and that that's not it. There's nothing there, but that there is a path, and it's the path that Jesus invited us on, that leads us to being powerful, fully alive men that, I don't know, actually, how to add to that. Powerful, fully alive men. I'll take that. So you don't have to shut your heart down. You don't have to fit into a box. Like, there is and there's another note I wrote called The Greatest Adventure. This idea that following God is actually the greatest adventure in life. And on that journey, the full spectrum of what it means to be a man, you're going to get to step into and experience. I think that's what I would have wanted to know. I think because I think I probably just would have gone more directly to the stuff that I ended up at. Like, I'd always pursued mentors, but I didn't know that it's really, really hard to actually go through a dying process and a rebirth process without a mentor who's done it before that can guide you. So things like that are just this what I'm writing in the book.
Yeah, it's good. I can't wait to read it. Can't wait to share it. And you take your time on it because, it's worth it. It's a big deal.
Thanks. It's been a blessing to be able to do it.
Thank you, John. It was
Yeah,
a really
thank
good
you. This is
conversation.
fun. Appreciate
Yeah,
it. For
thanks for
pushing me to
letting.
do it.
Sure. I didn't say thanks for letting me in. It was really good, and I'm grateful for this conversation. I'm grateful you're taking the time to do it. Good
Thank you.
job. Keep going. Yay.
All right, have a good one.
All right, see you, John.